Hi, everyone. So first, thanks for the introduction. I'm Yuan. So today, I will present our insights about how to design user-centered authorization system for Internet of Things, especially for smart home. So this is joint work with Nan, Yueh-Hsun, Xiaofeng, Blase, Xianzheng, and Patrick from Carnegie Mellon University, Indiana University, Bloomington, Samsung, and University of Chicago. So we've been talking about smart home for a long time, but now it's really the time that people start to install smart home apps, people start to buy smart home devices, and companies start making lots of money out of it. So now it's a real time we should dive into the problem about smart home. Similar to smartphones, smart home platforms also provide marketplaces so that third-party developers can upload their applications and users can download these third-party applications to make their life easier. However, these third-party applications can be malicious or dangerous so that attackers can utilize these apps to launch lots of attacks. For example, take control of the door locks and also turn off the fire alarms. What's most crazy here is that users in smart home case, they have limited information about what is going on. Why is that? It's because that when they make a decision to install an app or not, they just read the interface. What they know about the app is just about understanding the functionality that is explained in the description. So with this limited information, for example, this workflow app will just tell users that it will help the user to control the lights and switches. And if user decides want to install the workflow app, they will just match a laundry list of permissions they need to grant. Well, in front of this laundry list, users usually don't know what's going on. For example, did you notice that this workflow app claiming to access the switch of the lights, they also access the lock? If you cannot spot that, how can we expect that normal users will be able to notice all these things, right? In fact, what the user knows is just a really small part of the fact, but there are lots of things going on behind the scene. For example, when user decides to install an app, the app will be deployed in the remote cloud, and the app can send commands to take control of all the different devices in your home. For example, in the workflow app case, it can also take control of the lock. Well, we can see that users have very limited information, but they need to make really important decisions, like whether or not they install this workflow app, which might unlock their door when they don't know, right? So let's think about it. What if we can provide users with the most important information? So here, I believe that the most important information are unexpected behaviors. Because, for example, for the behaviors that are related to the functionality, we don't have to tell the user. Because if user reads the description, they will know what might happen for the functionality, right? But what if there are some behaviors that is unexpected, that is not related to the real functionality? Then we need to notify the user about the case. So it would be great if we can have a good understanding about what users expect from the app, usually through the descriptions, and also understand what's really happening inside app, what app really performing in the cloud, like to the devices. We can notify lots of really important information to the user. Like in this case, we can let the user know that the app doesn't really need to control the lock. However, to build such a system is not easy. There are several challenges, majorly because of the features of smart home and many IoT systems. So the first challenge is that the security and privacy implication really depends on the context. So for example, previously, when you are using a smartphone app and the app asks permission to read a motion sensor, you know that it's just a motion sensor on your phone. It's accurate. But what if the smart home app wants to ask you to read your motion sensor? If the motion sensor, the same motion sensor, is in the bedroom, it means the app wants to know about your behaviors inside the bedroom. But if the motion sensor is outside, then you probably don't care, right? So where the sensor is, what's the context of the devices, is really have important correlation with the security and privacy implications, and which is new for smart home and IoT. The second challenge is that the behaviors in the code, this kind of understanding are really low level. But the functionality in this app are usually very high level. So there's a big gap between the low-level behaviors and high-level functionalities. And we need to bridge the gap to be able to generate what kind of behaviors are expected from the user. And also, the third challenge is that we need to support the cross-device scenarios, because in smart home scenarios, there are lots of cases that you need to have cross-device controls. For example, you need to know the temperature of the room to know whether you want to turn on or turn off the air conditioners. And because of these several challenges, previous solutions will not work. Previously, people usually use manifest permission or pop-out permissions. So these are the two major permissions, but they are not good for smart home or IoT scenarios. For example, for the manifest permission, it's just a list of devices or sensor information the app wants to get access to. We've seen this a lot in the era of Android. But there has been lots of research saying that this kind of manifest permission is not good for usability and also for security. Of course, it doesn't really provide lots of context information, which is really important for smart home security. And the second big category is the pop-up permission. So if you're using iOS, you'll probably see this kind of screen a lot. So this means when the pop-up permission only asks the user to grant permission when the time the app wants to get access to the permission. Well, one big disadvantage for pop-up permission in the case for smart home is that it's not automatic. So think about it. 3 a.m. In the night, and you have to, there's a fire in your apartment, and the fire alarm app wants to send you alarm, but before he can sound the alarm, he needs to pop out the permission for you to grant the access to sound the alarm. So that's crazy. Because the previous solutions will not work, here we design SmartAuth, which is a new authorization system for smart home. And we designed our SmartAuth so that it provides good context information and also automatic and also usable and secure. In the next few minutes, I will explain how we design the SmartAuth. So because we need to redesign the authorization system, we first want to make sure what kind of goals we have for the design. So the first goal is about security and privacy. We want to share the minimum amount of information and also the minimum capabilities just for the desired functionalities. And also, we want to suit all the IoT-specific requirements. Like we want to support cross-device, context-based, and also automated control for the smart home platforms. The third goal is about usability. So we want to help the users to make well-informed decisions and also minimize user burdens. The final goal is about performance. So we want to have a lightweight and compatible solution. Now let's take a look about the overview for SmartAuth. SmartAuth have several big building blocks. And the first building block is the program analyzer. So we use program analyzer to analyze the source code of smart home app and also to understand the notations inside the app so that we can get a really deep and good understanding about the behaviors in the app. note that besides normal program analysis, we also did an NLP analysis over the code annotations and also API documentations to really have good insights about app real behaviors. And the second big building block is the content inspector. So the content inspector takes app description insight and use natural language processing to understand what a user might think the app will do. So basically now we have two sets of behaviors. One side are the real behaviors from the app's code, and the other set of behaviors are the expected behaviors, user expectations from the description. And now we want to match the two sets of behaviors to identify what parts of behaviors are related to the functionalities and what are the additional behaviors that are unexpected from the user. And we can generate the security policy based on the consistency checker. Basically, we'll be able to know at this point what kind of information should we provide to the user. So we can use the security policy to build authorization interface to notify user about unexpected behaviors and also get their input. In the end, we also build the policy enforcer to enforce the policy end-to-end. Now let's go through a real example to see how SmartAuth work. So the first step will be to do program analysis over the source code of SmartAuth, of the smart home apps. So here I won't go into the details about the program analysis, but I do want to share the insights about how can we generate the context from the app. For example, this is a code snippet that app asks a user to select which device they want to get access to. And when we analyze the notation of the app, we'll be able to know that the app wants the user to select a humidity sensor in the bathroom. So now we have the context information for the humidity sensor, which is inside the bathroom. This can be really useful in the future analysis. I will get back to this. And also, we did detailed analysis over what kind of context will trigger what kind of actions. For example, here we'll know that when the humidity sensor sends a value that's above the threshold, then turn on the coffee machine. Now let's go to the second step, doing natural language processing, and also after that we'll do the behavior correlation for the two sets of behaviors. So we are talking about the one app, which basically tell you that they will provide you a cup of coffee after you take a shower. So through description analysis, we'll understand there are two entities in this app, which are coffee machine and also shower. And through program analysis, we generate three entities, which is a switch and a humidity sensor and also lock. At this stage, it's difficult for us to really understand which entity match the other entity on these two blocks, right? But remember that when we're doing the first program analyzer, we get the information about the context. For example, we know that the bathroom is for the humidity sensor, and also the coffee is for the switch. So it will be easy for us to really match coffee machine with the switch, and also the shower with the humidity sensor. So let's go further about how do we match the conditions. So based on our analysis over API documentations and also description analysis, we'll be able to match the conditions taking a shower in the description analysis, and also the conditions humidity reading above the threshold in the program analysis. And the final step is to understand what kind of actions will be triggered when the context happen. So we found that through the description analysis, the action is that turn on the coffee machine. But through the program analysis, we found that the action will be not just to turn on the switch for the coffee machine, but also unlock the door. So at this point, it's very clear that unlock the door is the unexpected behaviors. There's no sense that an app produces coffee after taking a shower should also unlock the door in the same moment, right? Now we get to the security policy, and we will go ahead to generate interface. When we generate interface, we want to match the user's mental model. So we want to have less burdens for the users, and also want to alarm users about unexpected behaviors. To achieve these goals, we first survey user perspective of installing smart home apps. We want to understand what kind of factors they care when they install the apps. And also, when we are designing the interface, we use iterative design and also with pilot studies so that we can improve our interface based on the previous comments. And in the end, we provide the design for the SmartAuth interface. You can say that from this interface, if these behaviors are related to the functionality of the app, we will just label it as green, and also we give the access to the user by default. However, if the app has unexpected behaviors like unlock your door, we will label it as red and also block the access by default. We tell user explicitly about what kind of behaviors will be unexpected or even dangerous. So in the end, we build an end-to-end enforcement for our SmartAuth on Samsung's Smart Home Cloud so that we can control how the app can interact with the sensors and devices to make sure they follow the security policies. Now let's take a look at how good is SmartAuth. For the evaluations, we did several experiments. And first, we want to know how effective is SmartAuth. This contains two major parts. So the first part is that we want to understand how accurate is the policy extraction. And the second, we want to understand how does SmartAuth impact users' behaviors. Will users be able to use the SmartAuth interface to avoid the unexpected behaviors? And also, we want to evaluate the performance overhead and also compatibility with existing applications and system. So for the first evaluation, we want to evaluate the effectiveness of extracting policies. We did manual analysis of the apps, and to verify all the cases, we manually analyze the behaviors in the code and compare that with the descriptions. So our ground truth is a human analysis. And we identify 3.9% false positive and 0 false negatives. The false positive case means that actually the app do not have unexpected behaviors, but our system label it as unexpected behaviors. This is usually because some of the descriptions are really written badly, so that our NLP didn't really know what kind of functionality the app should have and what kind of behavior should be related to the functionalities. So that's why we miss these cases. And also we did a user study to understand how users will react to SmartAuth interface. We did a between subjects in-lab study, and we invited 100 participants and split them into two groups. So one group of participants will see our interface, the SmartAuth, and the other group will see the current SmartThing interface, which is based on the manifest. For each participant, we have 5 pairs of similar apps, and we ask participants to choose one app out of the 2. And one of the apps has unexpected privileges. Well, this is one example of our app pairs. So you can see that these 2 apps are really similar in their functionality. They are both basically trying to turn the lights off when motion is not being observed. For the SmartThing interface, you can see that these 2 apps looks really, really similar. But for the SmartAuth interface, we can tell the difference that for the second app, the Ducking Behind Me app, the app has unexpected behaviors. So although the app wants to turn the lights off, when there's no motion. It also detects the temperature. So it's not related to the functionality. For a recap, this is back-to-back comparison of SmartThing interface and the SmartAuth interface. You can tell that SmartThing interface will not really tell user. They'll just list all the things here. But SmartAuth interface will be able to tell user what are the unexpected behaviors. And from our user study, we understand that users make better decisions with SmartAuth. Users who see SmartAuth interfaces are much easier to avoid unexpected behaviors. Remember that we ask people to choose from one pair of 2 apps. So if users choose randomly, it's around 50% for each of the app, right? So basically, you can tell that for the SmartThing interface, which is the current manifest permission interface, it's around 50%. Users are almost choosing it randomly. But for the SmartAuth interface, which are the dark blue, you can tell that most of the users are able to make the good decision, the right decision, to avoid unexpected behaviors. We also evaluate the performance for our SmartAuth. And we have pre-processing performance evaluation, which is just one-time cost to the platform provider. It's around 10 seconds per app. And the second part is about the runtime enforcement. And we can only see minimal increasement over existing overhead for the different operations inside the Smart App. We also evaluate the compatibility with existing architecture and also applications. And we observe the behaviors of the Smart App after we enforce the SmartAuth authorization interface. And none of these apps crash. And in the extreme case, if we block all the remote access, we have around 3.3% of apps lost some functionality. To summarize, we want to bridge the semantic gap between what a user sees from the descriptions and also what an app's code actually does. First, we use NLP to understand descriptions and also code annotations. Then we also use program analysis to understand the code, to see the real behaviors in the code. And also, in the end, we match the insights from the NLP to program analysis so that we can notify users about unexpected behaviors. And through our user study, we demonstrate that users are much more likely to choose safer apps with SmartAuth. We're working with Samsung for the deployment, and I hope our insights can help people to design authorizations in the future for the future platforms as well. And in the end, I want to give a big shout to my collaborators. Thank you so much for all the hard work together. With that, I would like to take questions. Thank you.
So if you could step up to the microphone, just give your name and affiliation, and ask away.
Mehdi Karimi from UBC. So how many apps have you tried SmartAuth with?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we have 180 apps. That's what we get available online in 2016. So basically, I think our SmartAuth gave initial insights about how should we design the authorization system for the smart home and other interfaces. But what's more important is that currently we don't have that large amount of data. But for example, in the future, if we have more apps, so we probably get more understandings. And some of the technology might need to be extended to get better understanding about the behaviors in the app and also the behaviors in the descriptions. So yeah, I'm excited about the future development for smart home, and I hope we can have more knowledge to understand the whole environment when it gets more popular. Thank you.
Kimberly Ruth, University of Washington. You mentioned the context dependence of permissions in IoT specifically. How do you deal with the case where a user, say, moves the motion sensor from outdoors into their bedroom, and now the permissions that they would want on it have changed? Do you re-authenticate on that?
Yeah. So currently we actually don't include the change of the sensors. So, but I think in the future, this definitely is an interesting problem that, for example, in the lifetime of people using the app, when they want to change the configurations, or maybe the owner had changed, what kind of thing you can do about it? I think it's an interesting question to think about. But currently, we're just basically following what the practice are and also trying to propose better authorization for the current environment. But I definitely think that's a good question to think about. Thank you.
Thank you.
Olins Fernandez, University of Washington. I think this is very interesting work. I kind of have two related questions related to each other. I'm curious about the threat model. Are the developers intentionally malicious here, or the apps kind of taken over by hackers or something? And are there any incentives for the developers to lie on their app descriptions or just give poor descriptions?
Yeah, that's a good question. So for example, if the malicious developers, they just are trying to lie about their functionality, like they can just create some adversary examples for our NLP analysis so that we don't understand their real functionalities, but users might have a different point of view about what the app is doing. So our current solution cannot combat that. But I think that's also an interesting question about adversary machine learning as well. And another question is that if the developers trying to hide their behaviors in the code, I think our current solution will be able to defend against most of the obfuscations, because our security analysis about code behavior is really related to the system APIs. So they cannot hide that anyway. But if they have creative ways to fool our program analysis, then we cannot get them as well. So
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, Matt Jones from Google. I had a question about malicious descriptions, where you say something like unlock energy savings, and it will then unlock your door. And then now we have a green checkbox in the thing, whereas before a user would do a coin flip and maybe, so they had a 50% chance of not doing it. Now they have an 80% chance of thinking it's a secure app.
Right. Yes. Yes. So what's your question then?
So my question is, what's the danger in this versus not doing it? And is there, I think you answered the malicious description before, but are we putting users at a disadvantage by putting a secure check mark on something that may or may not be secure?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. So basically, you're asking that we might think the app is benign, but the app might have other malicious behaviors that we didn't capture through the SmartAuth analysis, right? Yeah, so I think that's a good question. For our current result is that we don't have false negative case, which means we detect all the behaviors. But that might not be true if we have more apps and attackers become more sophisticated about how they hide their behaviors. So basically, what I'm thinking is that it's still better than giving more sensitive permissions to the app. But you are saying that we should not have we should not give them a certificate market anyway, right? I guess the technique can be really useful for maybe as a filter for the first stage. For example, for our analysis can generate lots of cases that reviewers can look into it. Yeah, so similar to Android apps. So basically, they also have some cases. They also have human reviewers. You might know more about this, right?
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, let's thank our speaker again.
Thank you.